if you look at this election, progressive incumbents in swing districts overwhelmingly won re-election.
It's been a while since I've checked in with the ladies at The View, but I came across this segment on the left versus Joe Biden and was shocked at how reasonable they were. So usually when I cover this show, it's because of their massive impact on millions of people, and I have to correct a lot of the misinformation that is put out there. And it's not necessarily their fault. These people aren't, politicos. They get their information from CNN, MSNBC. But because of that, they often parrot talking points that have no basis in reality. But this segment was actually good. So I have a few clips to show you here. Let me start with Sarah Haynes on her thoughts.
Now that Joe Biden is our president-elect, some progressive activists and politicians who supported him want to make sure he includes people in his administration who represent their interests. So what does this mean? Should we trust him to put folks in and see what he does, or should we just give him a list of stuff we want done and go from there? Sarah, I'll start with you. What do you think?
Well, Biden's at the top of the ticket, so it is up to him. That's what he was voted to do. And I think a lot of people who voted for him wouldn't have necessarily voted for a Bernie Sanders. So it was his more moderate views that I think secured a lot of that victory. Now, the progressives make up a huge part of the Democratic Party, so I definitely think they have a place at the table. They just shouldn't be hosting the whole dinner party. I like the idea of them pulling some of his ideas. I think there's a place for them to contribute. One of them is working wages. We saw in Florida that the state went Republican, but on that same ballot, they voted through a $15 minimum wage by 2026, I think it was. So it shows that the party of the working class needs to speak to those working class people that are sometimes voting Republican. I also think student loan forgiveness is an area where we can all get on the same page. But I think there's always a place for people. Biden and Harris are showing right now that they're appointing people with diversity. And I think that there's a space for ideological diversity as well. They spoke a little bit about even having maybe Republicans in the cabinet. So I think we're going to see a pretty vast array of people and ideas coming forth to lead the Biden administration.
So shockingly, not a bad analysis here. Now, yes, there is a bit of misinformation in that. I'll get to it in a second. But discussing how Florida voted to raise the minimum wage while voting for Donald Trump over Joe Biden, definitely worth mentioning. Donald Trump, of course, did not support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, though Joe Biden did, yet he barely discussed it on the campaign trail. Of course, the Democratic Party needs to do a much better job at speaking to working class voters. Student debt forgiveness, actually bringing this up and discussing it as if it is an obvious idea. This is how this topic should be discussed in the press, in the media. So it's good to see The View helping to mainstream that idea. And overall, just discussing how, it's important to be open to these ideas. But let me correct a few things here before going on to the next clip. People did not vote for Joe Biden because of his moderate positions. In fact, this is polling before the election, Pew Research here, though there was a lot of polling showing the exact same thing. Top reason people voted for Donald Trump and Joe Biden, if you go down to Joe Biden, he is not Trump, is the top reason that people wanted to vote for him. This is before the election. 56% of them saying he is not Trump. That's why they're voting for Joe Biden. It's not because he was moderate, and I'll get to more on that when it comes to the primary in a second. Morning Consult also showing a very similar result in their exit polls. This is negative partisanship weighs heavier on Biden voters than Trump voters. You see here among Biden voters, 54% said it was a vote for Joe Biden and 44% said it was a vote against Donald Trump. Again, this is a much larger chunk than when it comes to Trump voters who largely were voting for Donald Trump at 75% compared to only 22% voting against Joe Biden. So you see here, at least based on the election, at least around half of voters did not vote for Joe Biden because of his positions. It was because he was not Donald Trump. And we can go even deeper into that when it comes to the primary. As in the primary, all the states that Joe Biden won against Bernie Sanders, those states in those same exit polls said they support single-payer health care. Even though Joe Biden does not support single-payer health care, the states that voted for Joe Biden support, in a majority, single-payer health care. Vox writing here, A pattern has emerged in Democratic primaries. Biden keeps winning, but most Democrats embrace an idea closely associated with Sanders, Medicare for all. Take Florida, where Biden soundly defeated Sanders, winning 62% of the vote to the senator's 23%. It was Biden's biggest win of the day and one of his strongest showings in the primary so far. But even there, 55% of primary voters said they support a government plan for all instead of private insurance, as compared to the 33% who opposed such a shift. In Illinois and Arizona, Biden won a smaller but still commanding victory, yet 61% of Illinois primary voters and 58% of Arizona primary voters prefer a government plan to the current system. And if we go to NBC polling on this, again, very similar result here. Support a single-payer government health insurance plan for all. Again, this is during the Democratic primary. You see in Mississippi, Tennessee, Virginia, Alabama, all these conservative states, a majority of voters, even though they backed Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders, a majority of voters support a government health insurance plan for all. So again, people voted for Joe Biden not because they liked his moderate approach, but because the media told them that Biden was more electable. That is the only reason Biden got the kind of support that he did. That, and of course, the familiarity that people had with Joe Biden already being Barack Obama's VP. There was a comfort in that people may have not had with Bernie Sanders because they were because Bernie was more of an unknown to them. So Biden being the safe choice in that sense, that's why people backed him, not because of Biden's moderate positions. But now let's get to the second clip where we're going to have Joy Behar and Sunny Hostin discuss their thoughts on this.
Well, the progressives have very good ideas, and the American people agree with the progressive ideas. They want health care to be affordable and readily available. They want somebody to take care of the fact that the climate is changing and to have respect for science. They want allocation of funds, I would think, if presented correctly, and not that you defund the police, but that you reallocate funds so that you have social workers and other important people dealing with problems like that.
Well, I certainly think that it should reflect not only the composition of our country in terms of diversity, but it also has to reflect the voters' values. And I agree with Joy in that, if you look at this election, progressive incumbents in swing districts overwhelmingly won re-election. Every incumbent that supported Medicare for all and co-sponsored Medicare for all in a swing district kept their seat. And also these progressive people, that are calling them progressive ideas or socialist ideas, those ideas won convincing victories across the country, including in purple and red states. Voters in Florida, as Sarah mentioned, passed a $15 an hour minimum wage. 4 states legalized marijuana. There was a poll that a majority of Americans support progressive policies, which are higher minimum wage, free college, paid maternity leave, government funding for childcare, tuition-free college. And so really, I think that this administration needs to reflect those views because America has spoken. Those are the views that America supports, not this sort of conservative right-wing agenda. That's just not true.
Right.
This was shockingly awesome. You have here a mainstream show with millions and millions and millions of viewers in homes of people that are largely disconnected from the typical political discussions. You have these people at home absorbing these facts, these actual facts about where people sit on the issues and understanding and normalizing the idea of student debt cancellation, normalizing the idea of Medicare for all, normalizing the idea of higher wages. This is incredibly important. So fantastic job here from both Joy Behar and Sunny Hostin to just simply acknowledge reality of where the people actually sit and what people actually want. Now, last clip here, this is Ana Navarro, and I expected something a lot worse, but to my surprise, this really wasn't all that bad. Check it out.
What the progressives are doing and handing over a list of people they'd like to see in the administration is what a lot of groups are doing. You dance with those that brung you to the dance. And I can tell you right now, there's Latino groups that are submitting names forward. There's African American groups that are submitting names forward. There's women groups that are submitting names forward. It is what you do. And when I saw those appointments yesterday, that first batch of senior appointments for the White House, I was like, oh my God, Look how refreshing this is. A whole slate of appointments, and there's not a relative amongst them. There's not an in-law amongst them. There's not a white supremacist amongst them. There was an African American. There was a Dominican woman. There was Julie Rodriguez, the granddaughter of, Cesar Chavez. Nobody under federal investigation. Nobody that's, facing a potential indictment. It felt like Christmas in November. Give it to me. It was diverse and it was wonderful. It was, I think give Joe Biden time and space and hand over those lists.
All right. Not too bad. This is somebody who is a Republican, or at least was a Republican. Supported, worked with Jeb Bush, worked with John McCain, being completely open to the idea of progressives submitting names to Joe Biden and this being a discussion and not being overly critical of what progressives are fighting for. As everyone else in the panel discussed, it is how most people feel about the issues. So again, the reason why it is important to have a show like this become more in tune with the average person is because of the power that a platform like this has on your average individual. When the culture begins to change, when celebrities begin to acknowledge the steps that need to be taken in terms of something like single-payer healthcare, then that is when you begin to see real movement and real public pressure to moving policy and particularly a Joe Biden administration in the right direction.